Jerusalem is a city that sits high on a mountain. It's a beautiful city. So if one is going on pilgrimage to the temple, which resides in the city of Jerusalem, he or she must ascend the mountain up to the temple. Psalm 130 is a pilgrimage song. It's a song or a poem that might be recited by a pilgrim going on pilgrimage to the temple. It's been called a penitential psalm or an ascent psalm as the pilgrim ascends up to the city of Jerusalem. We don't think of ourselves going on pilgrimage to our church on Sunday mornings, but it might be helpful to think about the preparation that a pilgrim makes as one ascends up to the place of worship. And in this particular pilgrimage song, the pilgrim is confessing as the pilgrim ascends to the temple. I'm going to read Psalm 130 in the Common English Bible. This is a translation done by a group of different denominations, but the Disciples of Christ had a part in it. It was translated by some Disciples of Christ ministers. All translations are interpretations because the interpreter's perspective is always incorporated within the translation. So this interpretation for verse 1 and 2 says, I cry out to you from the depths, Lord. My Lord, listen to my voice. Let your ears pay close attention to my request for mercy. From the depths, the pilgrim cries out, or the psalmist cries out. The depths to the ancient mind would be those destructive forces that diminish life. It would be those forces that confront people with deadly threats. It would be symbolized in those days by water, not the calm waters that we see behind me, but the rougher waters that we saw last week in the sermon that I preached in front of Valley Falls. The depths for the psalmist, we don't know what that is, but I think I do know some of what the depths are for us today. For those who are extroverts, they are struggling with the isolation, this not having a social area to abide in. For those who are more anxious, they may be struggling with fears. We've got many fears that could overtake. Those who have elderly parents are worried about them. They are especially worried if their elderly parents are in the nursing home. Those who are unemployed worry about money that hopefully can last until the stimulus money comes in. And then last week, Rabbi Blair preached a poignant prayer for the West Virginia Day of Prayer. Rabbi Blair is from Temple Israel in Charleston, and he reminded us that there may be a rise in domestic violence as those who might be apt to abuse are trapped within their homes with their families. But the psalmist dared to ask God to bend God's ear and pay close attention, to listen to the psalmist's voice. I don't think that I command God to listen to my voice, but I wonder if I listen to God as much as I ought to. The percentage of my time spent listening to God is very minimal when I look at the time spent in engaging in the rest of my life. I expect God, I may not command, but I expect God to listen to me when I talk to God. But how would I feel if I had the unequal time by my family that God has, that I give to God? Who is really guilty? Is it God or is it me? Who is really the one who ought to bend the ear or pay close attention. Let's continue on and see what the psalmist says. If you kept track of sins, Lord, my Lord, who would stand a chance? But forgiveness is with you. That's why you are honored. Or some of your translations may say fear. So it's some kind of sin that the psalmist is struggling with. We don't know what kind of sin. Sin is a personal thing. We don't need to know what kind of sin. But we all struggle with sin, or at least we should struggle with our sin. But the psalmist reminds us that no matter what the sin is, God forgives. And because of that, we honor or have awe for God. I don't particularly care for the word fear, because the fear in the Old English Bible has a different meaning than fear today. I think that the word today is more of honor or awe, because you see, I shouldn't fear God when I sin. When I sin, I punish myself. It is my sin that I ought to fear because of the consequences, not a God who is going to punish me. I don't think that I should fear God who loves and forgives. I should fear my own actions and my own punishment with my consequences. I sin, I bear the consequence, but God loves me anyway. Verses 5 and 6 say, I hope, Lord. My whole being hopes, and I wait for God's promise. My whole being waits for my Lord, more than the night watch waits for the morning. Yes, more than the night watch waits for the morning. My whole being, right down to my soul, the depths of my soul, my mind, my heart, all waits for the Lord and has hope in that. Night watchmen in those days before electricity would stay up all night long to keep the towns safe. They would be probably long and lonely nights, watching and listening. Many can relate to that now, as many are alone in their homes, lonesome, waiting and watching, not knowing exactly what will happen in the future. I also think of sinfulness, those nights when we are wakeful, when we wait for God to give us some kind of hope or relief from the mess that we've made in our lives. It's that night watchman waiting for the morning. The problem is sin. But I think the poem is backwards in the way that the poet speaks about sin. Because it's when I wait on God that I see the ways in which I must confess. When I spend time with God, I am intentionally spending time with God and intentionally looking at my life. I see my sin. I'm very good at rationalizing away, ignoring the bad and polishing the good, feeling good about myself and not really thinking about those areas that I really need to make amends. So what do we do with this psalm right now? Sit in the sin while we're all alone in isolation for days and now weeks? I don't think so. I don't think that now is a time when we need to beat ourselves up. I think there are times when we do need to think about our shortcomings, but I don't know that it's beneficial during this particular time in our lives and the life of the world. But I do think it is crucial to sit with God. It's challenging in our regular lives to find time for God. I don't know about you, but I need to plan my life in order to plan in times for God. And even then, it's hard to be quiet, to quiet my mind, to hear God's voice. but I can when I'm doing certain activities. One of the activities I spoke about last week was kayaking. That's a time, even if I'm with people, that provides me with some silence. I can do it often when I hike. But one of my favorite times is fishing. When I'm fishing, it seems like, even if I'm with people, it seems like there's this unspoken rule that when we fish, we need to do it quietly. I don't know if fish can hear our voices, but fishing is often done, even if it's in a group, it's done silently. And so I'm sitting here today fishing at Deegan and Hinkle Lakes Park in Bridgeport, a beautiful little lake, and there are many people out fishing. I didn't know, but I guess the governor said that we could fish for free in the next few weeks. And so I see many people out here in this gorgeous place taking part in fishing and kayaking, and I hope that some of them are taking time to speak to God. Well, in fishing, there's many techniques. We each have our own technique. I like to use a bobber. A bobber is, I think, a cork inside. Mine's kind of a red plastic on the outside. But when a fish grabs the hook, the fish pulls that bobber or that cork, and it comes down under the water. And so I see that bobber go under the water. I see the red plastic go up under the water. There are so many things that mimic a fish. If I don't have a bobber on the line, it can feel I can feel vibration and think that might be a fish, or I might feel a tug if my hook happens to come through brush. But if I have a bobber, I can see that bobber go down and up, and I'm pretty sure that there's a fish that's nibbling. And so I can't see into the water to see the fish, but when I have my bobber, I know pretty well when that fish is there. I have the same problem with God sometimes. It can be deceptive when I hear God's voice. There are many, many things that entice me in different ways, and they're not always God. It's not always the direction that I need to go. I was enticed by having a new car, a new house, new dresses, new clothes are often enticing. In a very humorous way, I was enticed to have a brand new fishing pole. Today was going to be the first time I was going to get to fish with that new fishing pole. But I'm here with my old fishing pole because the new one is too complicated to get the line wound on it. Sometimes the old maybe is better than the new. And I think during this time there are many things that, as we're indoors for many more hours than we're used to, we're finding that some of the old ways are the better ways. There are things we can't find in the grocery store. We might be cooking from scratch, which we haven't done for a long time. But sometimes the new isn't so great. Life can vibrate me in many different directions, and it's not always God's voice. So what are the bobbers in life that tell me what God wants me to do? Those things that give me a hint that God is in it. Well, we each need to find our own way, but I know for me, I need to make quiet time and find the quiet place. That's first. Second, I need to be quiet. I need to listen and not speak. The psalmist started this psalm by speaking. The psalm said, God, you listen to me. But the end of the psalm said, oh no, I don't need to speak. I need to wait. I need to listen for the voice of God. I need to throw my line out, and then I need to wait. I'm often surprised when I do that at the answers that just seem to come to my mind. Things that are troubling me that I can't figure out exactly how I should deal with them. Often in my quiet time, when I say, God, speak to me, something comes to mind. Is it my conscience? Sometimes those words that come to me are things I don't want to do. Maybe it is my conscience. Maybe it's not God, or maybe it's God speaking through my conscience. But either way, I know I'm better for it when I spend time quietly, intentionally allowing God to enter my soul. Well, as I said earlier, it's not good, I don't think, at this time to sit and beat ourselves up. We're too lonely, we're too isolated. I don't think that that might be a good thing right now. But I think there are lessons to be learned in this time. I know that I'm learning that I need to slow down. I need to smell the roses. I need to do it more often. I need to plan into my life more reading time. Not just reading for sermons, for study, but reading just to read. I need to plan more definite exercise times and cleaning my house. I need to spend a little time with my crafts. There's several things that I love to do. It's time to plant my garden. I need to do it. And yes, I need to fish with God. But honestly, there are times when the bobber in the lake never even budges. It doesn't go under the water. In those times, I need to just simply wait. If it never goes under, then maybe I need to change what I'm doing, adjust where I'm sitting, find a different spot, move. But either way, whether I'm hearing the voice of God definitely, or whether I'm just sitting, I'm spending time with God, I'm slowing down, and things are less stressful. So does God expect us to do nothing? Just sit? Do those things we love to do right now? Or should we do what Jesus taught us to do? Should we be collecting things for the soup opera? Soup opera needs toilet paper like everyone else. The Red Cross sent out a cry for blood. People aren't having blood drives like they ought to. Masks. Price cutters collecting homemade masks that can be put in a donation box there. We can be calling each other, encouraging each other. I love the humor on Facebook. Laughter's great medicine. There were some students who held up signs at the hospital telling the hospital workers how much they appreciate what they're doing, their sacrifice. There are businesses that are giving coffee for emergency workers, grocery stores who are giving free delivery. The National Guard sent out a call to help with meals for children, and Meals on Wheels needs adults who don't have prior conditions to help deliver those. With creativity and ingenuity, we can make it through these times. We can all heed the advice that we've been told to stay 6 feet from others, to go out only when it's necessary, to get fresh air, get exercise, eat good. We can all pray. I'm enjoying the lack of political campaigning right now. Don't know if any of you have even noticed that. It's kind of been a relief. And I love the fact that all people in our world right now are unified in one thing, in the health of everyone in our world. What a shame that it takes illness to unify people. So we patiently wait for God. We don't wait for direction right now, but we wait for resolution. Things are out of control. We have to trust our leaders. That can be frightening. We're waiting for this virus to starve itself out. We're waiting for medicine to be developed and distributed. We're waiting for people to feel better physically and mentally. We need a bobber. We want to see what's happening in the future. We want to see if there's something underneath the surface that is about to come to be hooked onto our hook. But in the meantime, without the bobbers, what are the lessons that we're learning? I'm learning to slow down, learning to prioritize my time better. I'm learning to use my resources wisely, using everything in my cabinet. I'm learning to appreciate more the connections with family and friends. I'm learning to lean on the hope of God that all will be well. For the ill and the unemployed, this is really difficult. But the truth is, all will be well in the end. The psalmist says in verse 7 and 8, Israel, wait for the Lord, because faithful love is with the Lord, because great redemption is with our God. He is the one who will redeem Israel from all its sins. In God, there is always hope for a brighter future. We're living in Lent, physically living in Lent right now, something we never would have envisioned. We're headed to Good Friday, when Christ was crucified on the cross. Difficult times. We haven't had deaths in West Virginia yet, but we're told it is inevitable. But Easter is coming. Amen.